Okay, and we have these. Welcome back, everyone. I'm glad you took the chance to stand up and stretch. We're big advocates for, in the classroom, kids getting to stand up and stretch and move. And we know that we're no different. We need to stand up and move and get the blood flowing again. So just a note to you, so we are, you can tweet this to us, you can email it to us, you can just tell us face to face, or we've got some chart paper out in the hallway where you can leave a sticky note. Of course, if you have questions, and we try to monitor that throughout the day and try to answer those for you. But what would you like to see on our website? If there was a great website for Ohio that gave families of children pre-K through grade 12, or school personnel, principals, if you're here as a principal, Mr. Alston, you're saying, this is what I would like to find there. If you're here as a teacher, if you're here as a community organization, what would you like there? We certainly want to link to all of the great resources that are already available in Ohio and nationally, and have that as a place where you can find those things. But we'd like to know. And one of the things that we're embarking on already, because we do lots of different projects supporting family engagement in Ohio. One of them has given us the opportunity to take one of the courses that we've developed for teachers around engaging families, and to create that as a self-paced online course. So we're working on that, beginning to put a team together to develop that and have that ready probably next January. So even courses, even little 30-second videos that are animated about a topic. You know, we can do all sorts of things. So we'd like you to help us know, as you think about your family, as you think about your school, your community, the other people that you interact with, what would be helpful for them to sort of understand the importance of this? You know, there's different myths and things out there in society. You know, it was all great when we learned to put on our seatbelts. Right? It was all great when we learned from Smokey the Bear not to start forest fires. You know, we have these great, so we would love to sort of all know how important it is for families and schools to work together, and the great benefit for our kids. And so how do we get, you know, move that in Ohio, so that Ohio is this state that really believes in that and supports that, our employers too. And how do you like to receive information? So is it Twitter links, is it newsletters, an email, paper? You know, what are the different ways? And people that you know as well, help us to know how we can be great listeners and informers. So that's something that you can kind of mull on, and as you're thinking, grab a sticky note. You can stick that on the wall or grab one of us. So, okay. So let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about us. It's our second date. You know, we're together again, and I really want us to be great. I want our state advisory council to really work well together. If you've ever been on a team, sometimes you have group norms. You know, you have the let's be this way when we're together. I know that you've been on great teams, great councils, great groups where you think, this group got it done, and you looked forward to going, and you thought, because we're going to really do great things, I'm going to enjoy my time there, I'm going to enjoy the people that I'm with. And there are other groups that you couldn't wait till they got over. You found reasons why you couldn't go. If you had a priority list of things, it kind of got moved to the bottom a lot. So we do book studies together, and one of the books that we love is a book by Jim Knight called Better Conversations. It's, you know, we use it in professional development with teachers and with school staff working together, but it helped my marriage. I mean, it's just great. You know, we need to have better conversations, be better listeners. It's a great book about, you know, being better at really relating well with people. And in his book, Jim Knight has these sort of key components to having the best conversations. And when we work with teachers in professional development and we talk about parent-teacher conferences or IEP meetings, anytime they're with someone, we said, what if when every time you met with a family member, they left that meeting feeling great, feeling supported, feeling valued, feeling like they had the information that they needed? What if parent-teacher conferences or meetings at school were life-giving? What if our conversations were really two-way? That we didn't just talk at, but we heard from and listened and learned together? What if we could reserve judgment and, as Paulo said, presume positive intent? Just know that even if someone walks in the door and they're pretty angry, it's out of love or care for their kiddo. If this teacher is really frustrating, it's because she's or he is really working hard, and this is hard work, as you brought up for this, and I thank you for that. What if we really exercised respect in our meetings? What would that look like? What if we really heard what others have to say and saw others as equals in those meetings? This is very informative. We feel like these could change conversations that we have. And so we really hope that for us here, that these are could be some of our guiding standards as we work together, so that when we ask you sort of roll up your sleeves in a work group, in a small group, that you would leave that work group not feeling like someone really judged you in what you felt coming as a parent or coming as a school leader, but that you felt respected in those conversations. We really want that to be your experience. So what we've done is on your table there's one sheet of paper that has this diagram on it. So somebody at your table might help us by finding the sheet of paper that has this diagram on it. Do you see it? All right, great. So what we'd like you to think about with us is think about the best meetings or conversations that you have, the best ones, and think, what do people say there, and what do people do that make them that way? And at your table, if you would write a list of norms for our meetings together, that we can sort of solidify and say, this is how we promise to be together. And so if I get offline and am not respectful, I want Tracy to say, Barb, this is how we're together. And I, let's check where you are right now, because it didn't seem very respectful of you. Like having a space where we can kind of remember where we want to be in our work together. So maybe it's we work hard. Maybe it's we take cell phones outside the room when we take a call. Sometimes there are those logistical things. Maybe it's trying not to, or being aware that we're not monopolizing conversations when we have meetings, but everybody at the table has a chance when we meet in small groups, that kind of thing. So we'd like to kind of hear from you what those important things will be for us to make sure that we keep in mind. And then we can all do it together. Does that make sense? Okay. So we are going to do some more thinking about the framework and more thinking about family engagement and hearing from you. But right now we thought we'd pause and just kind of think about how can we have our best meetings so that we continue to do this. So I'm going to be quiet and let you have some time at your table to do that. And if one person would please, we'd ask you to sort of, if everybody wants to do nose goes, see who's last, or volunteer someone in your group to be the recorder, please. We need someone to kind of take notes from your group. All right, I'll call you all back together in just a little bit. thank you all for that conversation. Show me, raise your hand if you'd like a little more time to keep talking about that at your group. More time? Okay. How about 2 minutes? Can I get 2 more minutes? 2 more minutes. Conversation, so I'm going to jump in. All right. So I'd love to hear each of your groups sort of report out. So if you were the recorder, you might want to point to somebody else who would be the so it's up to your group. Sarah's trying to pass it off here. So all right. And while you negotiate that, I want to point you to we made a little bookmark for you. There's a little bookmark. Yep. Yeah, you want to be our. So we made a little bookmark for you. We took those habits, better conversations, and put them on a bookmark and our sort of connectors on the back. So just as a little takeaway for you. So let's, if we could, can we hear from you what your sort of a summary on. From what your group sort of, can we start back here? The ideas that your group brought?
Okay. So I'll just read through this collection of thoughts. Be respectful of others' perspectives. Be aware of how we feel about what's said. Treat others how we would like to be treated. Recognize that cliques can lead us to think and act a certain way, sometimes, maybe against the grain. I recognize that everyone has an important role, including staff at the school, parents, each of us in our different roles and way we participate. We never know what others are dealing with, their backgrounds, where they're coming from, and to presume and assume positive intent when it comes to the things that we're hearing from each of us. And then try not to generalize or stereotype. Everyone is from somewhere different than everyone else.
Yeah. Thank you. Way to go. Group 8, Table 8, thank you. Thank you for that. How about we head right over here to...
Oh, and you just demonstrated another one that I like, which is acknowledging when people do something for us. So that was
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, there's some overlap in ours. We had groups everyone should be able to feel free to express their opinions and feel safe at sometimes maybe going against the grain. Everyone should have respect for everyone else and to keep in mind that everyone in the conversation ultimately has the same goal. Allow for sharing of the floor. It's when there shouldn't be somebody who's dominating the conversation all the time. Be an active listener and be present. keep the goal of the conversation as the main task of the group. Do something to make sure you keep the goal in mind so you don't get off task. And we also, some people had the suggestion of having somebody in the group who is responsible for keeping the group on track, or considering assigning roles to everyone in the group to make the group more productive.
Okay, thank you. Well, those are, yes.
I just thought of one. You ever notice how if you make eye contact with someone else, they're more likely to talk in a group? I was noticing that in our group. So making eye contact with everyone of who you're talking to, just to make sure everyone in your small group or whatever you're doing in the conversation has a voice.
All right, Grant.
Our group talked about boundary breaking, which to help build better conversations so we're more relatable, as sort of like an icebreaker activity.
Okay.
Making sure that everyone has a voice at the same level, and try to self-check that throughout the conversation. No judgments before the conversation or as it goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Conducting conversations in an open manner, letting in information, taking in information, not having preconceived notions, truly listening to others as they talk, recognizing that collectively we are more alike than different. So that helps to better understand our common ground. Recapping information and checking for understanding. Assuming that everyone involved has a positive intent. Trying to make activities fun. Being courageous in conversations so that we express our ideas better and having more trust with one another. And also being straightforward. Taking comments in an intended manner. Changing our attitudes so that we can better connect with one another, and being empowered.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow. Okay, yeah, let's.
Hi. So we had a few, and then we decided to collapse them into three. So the first was, it's groundbreaking, be respectful. The second one was sticking to a timeline, time limits on topics, because sometimes, we can get a little carried away, but recognizing the importance of that. And then just being open-minded and curious about people's experiences, but also what people are saying, how it might apply to you, those sorts of things. So.
All right, thank you. Wow. Boiled it down.
If you have common ones with what's been said, you can pick a smaller set you have that right.
Okay, I'll skip over some because they were already mentioned, but know the purpose of the conversation. Don't assume, in other words, don't assume. Stay on focus. That tends to kind of haunt us in my office because everyone knows each other, and all of a sudden we'll get off topic, and I have to reel him back in. Face-to-face is always better than conversations or meetings via conference call. It's always good to try to avoid conference calls and try to do everything face-to-face, or email for that matter. Ask for clarification so the message is clear. Listen and encourage. Keep the message simple. Offer appreciation at the end, which I think you mentioned earlier. That's really good. It's okay not to make an immediate decision right away. In other words, sometimes it's good to sleep on it and then come back and decide later. And finally, I think this is the one that our table focused on quite a bit more time, and that's know the background of the participants. I think we kind of hit on that earlier, but by that we mean know the cultural background of the people in the meeting, the social norms, language barriers that might exist, so be conscientious of that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, so we shared a lot of the ideas you had, so I'll share some of the ones maybe we haven't heard as much from the other groups. We enjoyed conversations when there's sort of an activity along with it, maybe as simple as a walk, but there was a coloring activity that was mentioned, just sort of made it more enjoyable for participants. The conversation should build mutual agreement, perhaps with summaries at the end of the conversation, identification of next steps if that's appropriate, or a recap as was mentioned. And we think it's important that the conversations be timely so that when someone has something to share, they can converse about it. They don't have to necessarily wait months to get that off their chest. So they're mutually convenient for everyone participating.
Okay, thank you.
We had a lot of similar things to what everyone else has said, but we talked about avoiding assumptions, with the exception of assuming the positive intent, not being judgmental, providing the time to have others give feedback, have conversations, and ask questions, so not rushing to maybe what would seem like an easy answer, but allowing everyone to have input, making sure that we stay open to being challenged, really defining our roles as teachers, as parents, as professionals, and respecting the expertise that others bring to the table in their unique roles. Redirecting toxic conversations. We talked about looking always for positive solutions, trying to problem solve, and not just getting stuck in venting or negativity or negative assumptions about others, having mutual respect, and then starting each meeting fresh. So kind of putting things aside.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah. I really like that idea of starting each meeting fresh. Sort of leaving and be like, okay, maybe it wasn't perfect, but it's okay. we can come back and do this again. And something that was captured in my group was finding a way to make these things work as an individual. So do you need to wear a rubber band and snap yourself to make yourself pause? Do you need to put a bookmark on your lap and say, okay, this is a group conversation. How can I be a model for these things that I want to be?
Hi. So we came up with a lot of things. A lot of it was already talked about, but establishing group norms like what we're doing right now, allowing everyone the opportunity to speak. We said be respectful, non-judgmental, appreciate other people's point of views, listening attentively, no devices. That kind of goes along with being respectful. Validate feelings and concerns, acknowledge different communication styles, like not interrupting when there's a pause. There are like certain ways that people communicate. Be on time, stay on topic, value relationships, and have trust. Have a facilitator, someone who engages everyone in the discussion, and have an agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Did I get everyone?
I think we did. Thank you for
Thanks.
that. That was rich, I think is. And so, if I could have your permission to let us take back what you've said today, and instead of all of us all together trying to processing that down, if you'll let us take those things and process them for you and bring them back to the next meeting. Certainly give you a chance to say, wow, you missed one that I think was important, and so we'll bring it all back to you, and then we'll bring down what we think is the sort of common ones that we can pull together for a group, if that's all right with you. Did anyone feel like there was a big one and we missed it and it just occurred to you and you just want to add it now? But okay, so that's what we'll do. We'll do our rubber band thing again, where we gather it all in and then we'll pull it together for you as a group. Thank you for that. So in our last conversation, we asked, last time we were together, you shared with us about what does it look when we really do this well, when home and school are really partnering well. We asked, from your perspective as a student, as your perspective as a parent, as an organization, as a principal, what, and then we brought those all together. And so that was one big sort of stretching of the rubber band for us, and we talked about a definition. But then beyond a definition, there are big areas of this work. Some people call them principles of the work. Some people call them the big areas of the work, or the standards for family engagement and education. And so we started to look. We stretched the rubber band pretty wide, and we looked at some different places that already have said, these are the standards for family engagement and education. These are the big areas or the principles. Some groups call them different things, but we went to the U.S. Department of Education and looked at theirs. And then we also looked at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. They actually have a joint policy statement on family engagement where they list out together what they say are those big principles of family engagement. And we're happy to share with you sort of any of these big documents that you would like to have. We looked at some other states. We looked at the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. We looked at the Massachusetts Teacher Standards for Family Engagement as well. We went to the National Association for Family, School, and Community Engagement, and I'm a part of a work group there where they're developing some standards for family engagement. We looked at the National PTA's standards for family engagement, as well as here at Ohio State. We've been doing this work for a number of years, and we have a set of principles that we've been working with that based on our review of the research in this area. We also looked at the standards and the areas that Johns Hopkins University, they have one of the longest standing sort of family engagement evidence-based processes. Then we looked at their standards. So we kind of stretched that rubber band out to say, how are all these different places saying, what are the main areas? What are the big buckets, the big ideas around family engagement? And we actually created this huge spreadsheet, and we have a printout of it somewhere, where we tried to align them and say, well, here's a common one from these 4, and here's a common one from these 5. We tried to see where are they the same, where are there ones that only one of these groups might hold this as a standard, but others don't. Created a big list of those, and then we looked at what you said. So there's a column for Massachusetts and a column for Wisconsin and a column for each of these. And from your notes from our last meeting, we created a column and said, this is what our Parent Advisory Council said. And we pulled out your quotes from your individual thinking that you had recorded. And we lined those up as well to say, what are those big areas? And there were about 22 that sort of came together for us. There are about across 22 big areas, it seemed like, that emerged from that, and that's stretching the rubber band pretty wide. I don't know that we want to have lists of 22, so we started to look across those. We also brought that list of 22 to a network of folks that we work with in Ohio, the Family and Community Engagement Network. These are folks around the state who are in regional offices, and their role is as family and community engagement experts in those teams. And so we asked them, try ranking these for us. Of all these 22, what are the most important in your work and the families that you work with? What are the least important? We just tried to get another sort of group of people in Ohio who really are vested in family engagement to say, well, what do you think? And then we looked at their highest ranking areas. And then the framework team, raise your hand, framework team from ODE, they had a meeting and they looked at them and discussed which were the most critical, what wording we liked and what wording we didn't like, and how to consolidate maybe a few of those in which we could discuss all the important areas. And then we here in our offices sort of took a look at that, and we did some sort of pulling that rubber band back to, bringing that back together, and we consolidated those into areas based on those notes. Because what we know is a good framework for Ohio is not going to be a 30-page document. It's going to be concise. We're going to say this well. There might be different tools, but our framework is going to be concise, it's going to be understandable, and it's going to have some principles in it. So that's where the goal that we were aiming for. And so we narrowed it down, you think, to these 4 big areas. Now, once again, we know this rubber band's coming in and out, right? So here's where we landed, about 4 big areas. One, that high-quality family engagement in education requires good communication between families and schools. One big area. Another big area, that it provides positive supports for learning and career planning and future planning for students. It provides supports for that to happen outside of the school, but at home or in our communities. All right. That this high quality family engagement education builds trust and respect between families and schools. And it builds community partnerships that support this as well. So those seem to be 4 big areas that we could bring these, all of these different ideas into. And then within these, that you could see all the different things we would do and the different ways that we would do them as well. But we were trying to think, are there 8? Are there 4? What could they be? So let's try these 4 on for size to say, could these be those big areas? We're just sort of putting it out there. We might need to expand them. So in each of your folders, you'll see a place where we would like some feedback from you. We'd like to have some thinking from you on this. So we're going to kind of tee up this afternoon's conversation right now by giving you a chance to sort of gather your own thoughts on this idea. So on your worksheet, on your sort of thinking page we gave you, if you could sort of gather your own thoughts and begin to think about each of these areas. What are some examples? And if we're thinking very early on in elementary, what are the earlier years? And what are some examples maybe from middle and high school? What does it look like when this is done really well? And if you would, because we know that things children develop and what we do with our children, what they learn in school changes, right? And family engagement with your preschooler entering kindergarten could be holding their hand and walking them into their classroom, right? But if I did that with my 16-year-old, whose name is Grant, no. It wouldn't be developmentally appropriate. I think the folks in the school might look at me holding my son Grant's hand as I walked him into his science classroom and say, that's not quite right. Right? Family engagement looks different at different stages. It could be a cultural assumption. In the Boone family, he would not be having that. But it could be. You're right. Thank you. Thank you for the check. So what are some examples for you? What that looks like in these 4 areas, if you would. So what does it look like? We know that, and we want to ask these questions for younger and for older. You know, as our kids grow and change, and it's going to look differently, we're assuming. What does it look like? We could draw it. Some of us think best by that doodle that kind of captures 1,000 words in this one way. So feel free to draw. Does it look a certain way? Non-examples. It's not this, right? I tried to give a non-example, which I don't know if it was a good non-example. But what does it look like? Or what does it look like when it's not happening, right? What does it look like when it's not there, you can tell because this is what you see, or this is how you feel, or this is what you know when it's not happening. And are there aspects of family engagement that you can't fit into one of these, that you think, nah, we've narrowed it down too far. This doesn't capture it all. We need a different space here. We need another principle. We need to expand this. And that is very well likely where this could go. So I'm going to be quiet and give you time to do that. And then when we're done with that, you're going to smell a delicious lunch. And we're going to start having our cellist play as well. So we have extra pens if you need something to write. But I'm going to just give you some time to think individually. All right? Doesn't mean we need to be silent if you want to. You can also commiserate if you'd like to. All right. All right, thanks for taking the time to gather your thoughts on that. Meredith was reminding me that we want you to know that a framework isn't a definition in 4 statements. There's a lot of more information to be included, and so the descriptions you've given us and the way that you've said things and the information that you've given us in the past remain. We haven't sort of tossed them out and boiled them down to 4 things and are moving forward, but we are want to include those as well. Sometimes we should kind of think, how do we organize these things? And I think about, if we think about big areas of how we organize the different practices and core beliefs and that we want our families and our schools to have around family engagement to really do this well. So, so in the stretching of the rubber band, we're not sort of forgetting and losing the good things that you've told us. So we're going to move this afternoon into sort of having some bigger, richer group discussions about this, and we have different groups than who you've sat with at your table, but we want to give you some time to talk with one another and meet with one another. And I'd like to be able, maybe at some of our future meetings, not maybe, at our future meetings, to have a little bit of our time to sort of highlight a few of you here, so that you're hearing about, there are amazing people in this room. Each one of you comes with a very different perspective and experiences, and I get to see all of that, we get to see all of that, and I know if you're really talking at your tables, you're getting to see that. But we'd love to maybe even highlight, if you're here from an organization or your family and the things that you do with your school, we'd like to be able to highlight that. And so at our future meeting, if you're willing, maybe at our next meeting, to do a 2 to 5 minute sort of share with us more about you, we would love to kind of start having that chance to really sort of focus in on a couple of you each at our meetings right up front. So grab me during lunch if you'd like to do that. So we have, so hang on to these thoughts. You can just leave them where they are, or they're yours for the afternoon to keep with you as you move forward. We have lunch through the doors there. It's ready to go. You know, last time you were here, I think we directed you to our offices, and there are tables there. My office is open. If you want to sort of get away and sit there, take a call, you're welcome to use that space. There are seats in the kitchen. We have our little seating area out there. You're welcome to move around the building. It's kind of cold outside. I'd love to send you down to the gardens at the Arboretum, but don't do that today. So we just have a nice time to break right now. And so I hope you take this opportunity to meet some new folks, connect with some folks you met last time, and just enjoy some lunch. Right, thank you.